Welcome back to Norms Lab, the space where we look at the unspoken rules that shape our lives in Nigeria and West Africa more broadly. I'm Anjola Ayodele, and this is our first episode of 2026. Pretty excited about that. Today, I'm joined by Blessing Tarfa Mam, an educationist and safe schools advocate who spent over a decade making sure every child gets a fair shot at quality education. Blessing, welcome to the Norms Lab.
Thank you very much, Anjola. It's great to be here, and I'm very honored to be the first guest for 2026.
Yeah, excited to have you here with us as well. So, Blessing, before we get into the big picture, right, I want to start with something very, very specific. You've been in a lot of classrooms before now. Can you tell us about one family you've met where you could really feel what they hoped education would do for their child?
Sure. There's so many, but I've recently mostly worked in like the non-governmental space, working with interventions that provide transition education as like a reintegration factor to school for girls affected by conflict. And what you really see is this excitement and hope that education is going to ensure that these girls are able to have some form of independence and ability to earn income to sustain themselves and in some ways the family, because these girls are usually the first people in their families to go through school, some of them even as low as high school. That's like basic education. Nobody in their family has ever been through that. So one person in their family being able to have access to basic education is them looking at social mobility. This person is going to earn a certificate, this person is going to get a job, and this person is going to start earning money. Hopefully use that money to be able to support their younger ones as well through school, because the parents are still, grappling with the situation of aid, the situation of also lack of credentials for them to earn money or to have good jobs, struggling with like the business landscape in Nigeria. So this one person that can go to school, that can get a degree, that is being valued in the society, is going to take that family out of poverty.
Awesome, exciting. And I think exactly that's why this conversation we're having today matters, right? We see this happen a lot in our local environment. And because Nigeria's new basic education curriculum now says every student must graduate with at least one practical skill. On paper, it looks like a wide open door for everyone who is going through that system.
Yeah.
But one of the questions we'll be digging into today is, which tools do our children actually feel invited to pick up? For instance, like this girl you talked about, when she gets into this kind of system, which tool, do they feel like they're invited to pick up? What are those unspoken rules about gender, about status, about what's appropriate that still shape those choices that they make?
I like the use of your word choice, because choice is such a privileged thing to have. For someone to have choice, you also have to imagine that that choice is being guided by all of the information that that person has access to. And in this case, the information through education usually comes from the curriculum and what the teacher tries to, teach the students. Unfortunately, though, the learners are not part of the curriculum development process. I remember, I think back in 2022, trying to develop a tool that sort of guides community-based dialogue in education as a model for when education stakeholders are trying to develop curriculum or education interventions, that the key stakeholders that are part of the education, that is the parents, the head teachers, the principals themselves, but most importantly, the learners, are part of that participatory process. We see it a lot with like health interventions. Health interventions are able to kind of have that when interventions are coming in for health issues. We're able to see a very much more community participatory approach, which is very different from education, because in education, there's the hierarchy of knowledge, right? Like everyone that has gone to school knows much, much better about what I want other people to learn compared to everyone else that has not been to school. So first of all, they're cut off from the ability to make choice on the information because they have no idea what the curriculum really, really is or really contains. And then the curriculum comes and the curriculum says by the end of these number of years, you're supposed to have a certain skill. And then we start thinking that that child and that choice that they have to make mirrors whatever the society is giving them. I'll talk about it in like two parts. In the curriculum aspect and like the societal aspect, we have to think if a school realistically and rationally in Nigeria, if the school is a federal government girls' college, which of the trades on that curriculum are going to be prioritized because it's a girls' college? There's cosmetology, there's food and nutrition. We know the society we live in, and we know we can just imagine how it's going to be prioritized, how it's going to be prioritized for the girls in those schools. The curriculum has, solar panel installation. The curriculum has agriculture, horticulture, livestock farming, and all of these things. Then we also have to think that for a school to be able to implement that, they have to have space for farms. If the school doesn't have farm land or space or access to livestock that they could raise, or even the funding to do those things, this elimination also happens. So that choice to even want to have the trade of being a farmer is taken away for you. Yeah. Next is the society itself as a sort of filter itself. If a girl child wants to learn solar panel installation, then she has to also grapple or rationalize the fact that that sector is now very much male dominated. So what is she going to have to fight for when she goes, if she decides to study in this aspect? What is the society going to tell her if she decides to choose and go in that aspect? It's not necessarily that the society might tell her, no, you can't do this generally, or the school will not say, we're not going to teach you this, but will she be employed, or will she be able to navigate these male-dominated spaces that are unsafe? We have to think about safety a lot when we think about access and choice as well. We also have to think about, and I like to use the word access as well as like physical access and then information access. I've spoken about the access to the information itself and what that means, but also physical access. If the course or the trade that is going to be taught or learned is domiciled in a location that is outside where that girl child lives, if someone wants to learn tie and dye or fabric making, and this person is in Yobe, where it doesn't necessarily happen, but it happens in Kano, there's Kofarmata in Kano where it's a booming tie and dye local space where people can learn. How much is this person able to support themselves to go to Kano to learn these things all the way to earning from it? Because in the end, we have to think that the choice also has to unravel back to the fact that this person has to be able to earn some money. So choice is very privileged, and choice is definitely based on the information. So at the point that someone is making a choice, we might think that I'm making the choice for myself, but I'm making the choice, but in my head are all these speech bubbles of things that impact that choice. And in the end, I might just be a shadow of everything else that is happening in the society being influenced to make the choice that I'm making. So I might be interested in, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, but I have to think, what's the earning power for teachers? What's the hiring factor for teachers? And by the time I am able to make that choice, I'm just not able to make the choice myself anymore. That is for me. Yeah.
Thanks so much. I love the perspective you brought into, that question particularly, and saying choice in itself, it's a privilege for anyone. And I can sort of relate back to, I mean, now this was like at university level. Now we're talking about universal basic education, but then when we're preparing to get into uni, and I have female friends who are thinking about what to do, and someone says, I want to study statistics or mathematics, and their parent is like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? As a girl child, Taluma Sawoye in Yoruba, meaning who is going to pay for that? So those were some of the things that we saw, growing up, and even just wanting to explore other fields that naturally not related to the girl child. And this also now takes me into my next question, which I think you already started touching on, is around when girls start showing interest in something people don't really expect from her. For instance, I studied electrical electronics engineering. We're practically like just two ladies in the entire department. And anytime I tell people I did engineering, they're like, oh my God, wow, you studied engineering? They just couldn't believe that, right? Yeah. And so when you look at those kinds of things, right, instead of focusing on, some of the pushback that they would literally get, like ladies will get when they're doing something atypical, right? Can you walk us through a moment where something shifted? Maybe you've encountered someone of that sort, something shifted, and what made the difference for them, even as they decided to show or told that part of a different interest or line entirely?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I like that you have a lived experience right here telling us about like studying engineering. And I'd say, being able to kind of have the grit to go against the resistance that happens can be something in a sense itself. And I'd say one of the things I saw shift was trying to work back in talking to girls about career, trying to walk back to what people understand about like purpose and about self-actualization and about what you're learning and what you really want to do, what problem you want to solve in the future, and then making sure that people understand the dynamic ways that these problems can be solved. Usually when we think about someone wants to be what we have like the professional courses, and somebody wants to be a doctor, somebody wants to be a nurse, somebody wants to be an engineer, we can't really think about how it's applied generally. If we want engineers, people want to build cars, people want to work in construction. When we think about doctors, people want to work in the hospitals, people want to cure sick people want to take care of the sick. But when we think about learning history, no one is necessarily teaching people what they can do with the skill of history. No one is necessarily talking to someone about what they can do with the skill of learning, being a professional in English language or being an archaeologist. So one of the things I really emphasized when talking about career is walking back of what problem do you want to solve? And then when we talk about the problem, we'll be like, okay, if you think the problem you want to solve is you want to be able to take care of sick people. Now, apart from doctors, there are so many other ways that people that are sick need help. If you want to be an engineer, you can be a biomedical engineer. If you want to be a historian or you want to be a researcher, you can think about the history of diseases, what were people using in the past. If you think about being a writer, you can write fiction, you can write non-fiction, you can archive, you can record things that are happening and events. So it's a thing of looking at what is it, apart from the noise of the society, apart from what the society is prioritizing, what is it, what are you thinking about? What is the problem you want to solve? And then understanding. But what we don't see usually in curriculum teaching or things is there's this isolation of what we're learning versus what problem this can equip us to, like the skills or what can give us the potential to solve. So there's that gap. So being able to draw a through line for each individual has been really important. And I've seen people change from thinking about wanting to be nurses or doctors and thinking that if they don't get the first choice of being a doctor, they want to be a nurse, and explaining that these people do very different things. Or thinking about wanting to be a teacher and, okay, what do teachers do? What can teachers do in the future beyond when you think about teacher being a basic education teacher? Lecturers are teachers. So you draw that true line for them. And I've seen them change from wanting to be doctors to wanting to be public health specialists. And I felt like, oh, these are tiny steps, but definitely very important. And I would say again, like, information and transparency is very important to how we enable people to make choices that are best for them, especially girls.
Yeah, thanks so much in sharing that. Information is very key, and totally agreed. Right, and also just changing their mindsets into what's possible. But I'm also wondering, in that situation where we've seen someone who wants to do something differently, how others around them, like other children around them, how they reacted. Was that like some moment of revolution, or does that can't spark some moment of revolution for people, so that it's now a mass collective change versus just one person who is being awed out of like a pack? So just understanding what that dynamics also does for, people within the same group or class age group, and all. Could you share something on that?
Yeah, I really like this question because something I always I'm interested in talking about is the deficit mindset we have about certain courses and certain skill sets or certain credentials and certificates over others. And it happens in the society and it plays back in the classroom. If someone wants to be a teacher, the first thing we think about is, oh, maybe it's because this person can do the much more difficult quotes, and I put it like air quotes, or this person wants to study geography education. It's like, oh, it's because they can't be an engineer. And when we bring it back into the classroom, then we have to address it there, because we need people to value everybody's skill set and everybody's education. And that is why you'd see that things that people try to connote and try to shift as jobs that are for women have, and I put it in air quotes, like jobs that are meant for girls are always looked down upon. When like the teaching profession is very much saturated with a lot of female educators. Yeah. But for me, when I think about even female educators, it's because of there's an issue of safety, there's an issue of safeguarding that ends up being the burden of women in education. So whether a school has 50 male teachers and only 10 female teachers, the burden of caretaking for the learners ends up being that of the women and the women in the school. So that deficit framing and understanding of what is valued in the society has to be addressed in the classroom. And I'll say, well, because do you understand that we have this problem in the society? Do you understand that if there aren't enough female gynecologists, then women won't have access to carers that are female that sometimes they would feel much more comfortable in? And we know that there's had to be like a tug of war between doctors, where people specialize in and things. But then in things like teaching as well, it's like, okay, if nobody wants to be a teacher, nobody's qualified to be a teacher, or nobody's qualified to be a biologist, or nobody is qualified to be a zoologist, what is going to happen to our ecosystem? In biology, you learn about your food chain, you learn about the ecosystem, you learn about conservation of nature, but you don't think that the people that have to do those roles are important. Then we have to change it from the classroom, so that even the people that feel like they want to be the outliers are not made to shift because they also want to feel a certain importance of what they're learning or their own credentials. Everybody's learning is important. Everybody's credential is important, because everybody else's purpose is different and important in a different way. And the world needs all of these people to have these special skill sets for it to run as well as it should, and for it to be of good quality, of good standards that everybody is going to be able to enjoy. We also have to think that if people are not recording history, if people are not journalists, people are not writing and working in media, then we're also going to have a problem of what democracy can look like. How can people that understand partisanism or like non-partisan politics able to influence the society in a certain way? So all these skill sets are very, very important, and we have to reframe deficit framing of skills and the workplace from the classroom as well as in the society. So when someone comes and introduces themselves with a career choice that does not seem that what is conventional, it's still very, very important.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think ultimately the sense of belonging for anyone is always so powerful. And so
Yeah.
when they get, these kinds of will I say talks? Some people will say TED Talks. When they get this kinds of support and encouragement to actually just go, or look beyond what's possible in that moment, it just helps to continue to steer everyone. And to our audience of practitioners and researchers listening in, I think this is the ground level that we need to continue talking about, even beyond this podcast. And so I would say, because we've promised our listeners an honest and relatable conversation, maybe we've been real, right? But let's be real right now. What's one thing that still feels a bit stuck despite the new curriculum, which yes, we applaud the government for, and how can we move it so that those changes we want to see begins to manifest?
Good question. So I would start with saying, just as you said, thinking and shifting across these things where students learn vocations in school. Children can think about what they're learning can be useful as soon as they're done with even basic education. 9 years of basic education, and you have like a skill that you can start to use is great, and it's functional. Where we need a lot of help with, or where there still needs to be a lot of intervention, I would say, is there's a myriad of things. I'll start with standardization in the society itself, and the fact that there's a way that interventions in education end up being very siloed. So this curriculum has been developed in a silo of the educational stakeholders in Nigeria. But how does the fact that the curriculum has introduced horticulture or agriculture, how has it translated to what is happening in our agricultural sector now? Have we been able to deal with the issue of food waste, food production, food preservation, manufacturing, converting food from raw materials to finished products as an industry in Nigeria? Have we addressed the issue of how we mass produce food and are able to export these things? Have we thought about how easy it is for someone to grow their rice in a farm in Adamawa State and is able to package it and have it standardized, and everyone is able to purchase that rice and use it? Have we addressed that issue? So if I'm learning these things, how can I see how readily accessible is the economy for me with these skills that I've learned? So I would say standardization. Also, we also have to think about improvement, as well as the fact that we have to compete with like a global scale or a global standard. When we think about teaching people cosmetology, or we think about teaching people farming or agriculture, we should not think about the fact that we are producing learners or students or hands, labor, for a workforce that is going to hire them. We have to think that we're also producing skilled people that are able to go out and also create something new that would be up to standard. We've seen a lot of improvement and a lot of change in like the Nigerian tech space, for example. We're leading in fintech and everything. Can we say the same thing about every farmer in Nigeria? Can we say the same thing about every engineer in Nigeria, every person that is an artisan? Can we see that for them? So standardization needs to happen, because standardization then also values enhances how we value the labor of these people. You go, you have someone work as an electrician in your apartment or your house, and you pay them 3,000 naira. How many times does that person have to work to get a livable wage? If nobody is advocating for these people within the society, then whatever skills they're learning through the curriculum equips them for a skill that is still going to require them to do other things to earn enough for self-sustenance and survival. Apart from that aspect of standardization, another issue we also have to talk about is like safety, security, and our justice system. Hiring sector, people go to work, they're being harassed by their bosses, they're being harassed by their colleagues, they're being harassed on the way to work, they're being harassed on the way back home to work. Who do they report to? And if they make any kind of reports, are they listened to? Are they believed? And is there some modicum of justice that ends up happening that makes us feel secure? I could take the risk of going to work if I know that other people around that could cause any harm for me are scared to harm me because they know that the society and this justice system is going to have them arrested or is going to have them incarcerated for the wrong that they're doing. There's a law that protects me from doing what I want to do. If I want to study architecture and I know that I have to stay late nights in the department to draw overnight, to work in this place, and I have to work back home at night, how secure do I feel within the school environment to handle those type of, to take those kind of risks? I have to think about these things. If the school I want to go to is very far from my home, I have to think about the fact that what's going to happen on my travel when I'm traveling from home to school. Am I going to get kidnapped? Which is something which is the real reality that students now have to think of, in addition to think about how they're going to survive in school, how they're going to have money to feed. When they go to the school, are there enough rooms and space in the hostel for everyone to be able to live in the hostel without thinking about off-campus apartments? These are all the kinds of issues that have to be translated, have to be incorporated in how the curriculum is implemented. So it's not just about creating this inclusive curriculum itself in content. We have to think about how inclusive and safe and even important the society is itself in bringing this into a reality. So like this, we have to rationalize, because whatever the curriculum is still, we go back into the society and we have to respond to what is happening in the society, and that still impacts our choices. So the curriculum.
Thanks for sharing those. I hear you say standardization, safety, security, which is key, and I think it's really important. Right now, we can have like all the best curriculum, but if the school is not even safe for people to go to learn, what are we talking about? And so I think now I'm thinking about, this seems more like a lot of policy problems, and also like implementing those policies to ensure that we have inclusive environment for students to learn. And now I'm thinking, who has the power to change it? Is it just the leaders, or everyone in the community needs to rise up and say, look, we need this to be better for our communities, and we want to hold everyone accountable in that sense, to ensuring that we have safe spaces for our kids to learn. We can do all the best things, but I mean, security, safety, I think that even tops the notch for me. If those are not there, then there's really nothing we can do. So I think my takeaway is, policy problems. Everyone has the power to change it. You and I, and even the government, our leaders, everyone has that power to change it. You just need to have that sheer will and drive to see those changes. And so maybe as we conclude, right, on the other side, we've talked about issues, challenges now, right? Where are you seeing like real signs of something better? What gives you that evidence and not just hope that definitely we're heading in the right direction and we're going to see the change that we want?
I see that so the education sector has a lot of policies, and they're definitely working on having these policies not just being available but also enforced. And an important thing about safety is enforcement. If the enforcement factor isn't there, then there are no consequences for issues that threaten the safety of people, that threaten the safety of students, and that threaten even the safety of schools themselves. Like Nigeria has the Safe Schools Safe Schools minimum standards for basic and secondary schools, which gives very directional ways of ensuring that students are safe within the school from violence, from mental health interventions that they would need within the school and things. So having that is a great first step. And I know that the civil defense handles reports about safe schools and issues that come from schools against any attacks that happen to students and things. There's a response center that listens on and then tries to address these issues as well. So these are some of the things that give me hope that these documents exist, and certain places have even started to operationalize them within their states. Like Kaduna State has its own standards now. It has operationalized the minimum standards into the context of Kaduna State for implementation. And little by little, I do hope that other states are able to domesticate these type of tools to ensure that once it's domesticated, then it is enforceable within that school and society. And then the next step is that the tools have guidelines for implementation. They have reporting mechanisms that teachers are trained on so that they're able to follow the right pathway, and then it gets to the people that can actually do something about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm maybe not putting Kaduna on the spot. I love Kaduna. Always pay setters. And ensuring that, they domesticate those things and, drive the change that they want to see. So it's really been great chatting with you, Blessing. And maybe before we wrap up, yes, this is my last question, right? If we keep opening these gates of opportunities across our schools, not just on paper, but also in how our classrooms and communities actually feel, what do you think is possible for the next generation?
For the next generation, I'm hoping that people are just going to have a lot more choices to make. And the options of choices, and none of the choices is going to be a bad choice. If someone is trying to decide between being a teacher or being a farmer or being a cosmetologist or being a surgeon, all of these choices are validated because all of them are going to be able to self-actualize, to mobilize, to go up to earn enough money, not just to survive, but to actually live. Because now we're in this melting pot of everything is about survival. So shorter term in school or learning in school, that means that immediately I finish, I have to get a job, which is just survival upon survival. And there's such a burden on survival that people are not able to just enjoy what really could be what they really want to do. If I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing something, I would hope that it's something that I enjoy. And that is something that I would want as many children to experience, the joy of living their life doing something that they actually enjoy, not because of the pressure to survive a society that is just about survival. So yeah, to live.
Thank you so much, Blessing. And there you have it, guys. To live. I think that's great, powerful words. Thank you so much, Blessing. We've heard it all today. Access is an issue. Information is really important to shaping those choices that people make. And the policies that we're already beginning to see across board from the governance, as long as they're being implemented across states and domesticated so that it's context specific, we're able to see these choices. So to everyone listening, parents, teachers, community leaders, we want to hear from you. What's one win you've seen where a young person felt truly free to share, to choose their own path? Share it with us. And until next time, keep questioning those norms. This is Norms Lab.